Right now we're going to jump into our mailbag segment. This is where we talk a little gardening Q&A, and I have my program assistant with me here today, Wanda Cannon, who's also our Master Gardener Coordinator. Wanda does a great job coordinating the Master Gardener program and handles a lot of those homeowner questions. So if you've called the Extension office, you've probably talked to Wanda. And Wanda, thanks for being here.
Okay, thanks.
Well, why don't we jump right in and take a look at the mailbag, see what kind of questions we have.
First one we have is, now that summer vegetables are growing and being harvested, what kind of preparations should be made for planting fall and winter vegetables? And what types of vegetables can be planted in the fall?
Warm weather crops that are intolerant of even a light frost are going to have to come out of the garden. Now, a few weeks ago, perhaps in late July or August, you could have got a second planting on things like cucumbers and squash and zucchini, maybe even tomatoes back in July. You could have planted a second crop. But at this late date, primarily what you're looking at are your cool season crops, things like cabbage and kale, beets, broccoli, spinach. A lot of those things that we think of as cool season crops, those are the ones that we're looking at this time of year. And so September is a great time to plant those from seed. If you're going to plant seeds, you want to get those in September. If you're going to plant garden transplants, the small plants that you may get at a nursery or garden center, you can do those well into October. And those crops are really going to benefit from the cooler weather. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you are going to be kind of just letting your garden lay for the winter season, you're not planning to do anything else as far as a second crop or a fall crop, it's a great idea to plant a green manure crop or a winter cover crop. And that could include things like rye, ryegrass, vetch, clover, all those cool season annuals that you can plant this time of year as we move into that September-October time frame. Get those in, let them grow all season long, and then you want to till those in and incorporate those into the garden about a month out from your spring planting next year, and that's going to add a lot of nitrogen to the soil. It's really going to enrich your soil. So a couple of quick things there you can be thinking about as we move into that time of year. Wanda, what's next?
Okay, this was a good one. We've had this a lot the past week. I'm having problems controlling ants in my house. What is an effective method of getting rid of them? I
personally had that problem, and a lot of folks have had that this year. What we're seeing primarily with ants right now coming into the house, they're Argentine ants. They're tiny little black ants that typically when you see them, they're in the kitchen or they're in the bathroom, and they travel in lines or in a trail. And so that's usually the ones we're seeing this time of year, and they're in the house looking for moisture. Do not bomb your house. Don't go crazy spraying a bunch of stuff. These ants are pretty easy to control if you use a bait type product. Combat makes a good product, Taro, Grants. Doesn't really matter to me what brand that you use, as long as you use one of the liquid ant baits. You just put a drop on a little card or disc that comes with the product. You put it on the back of the sink, maybe you put it under the counter, and those products do a great job controlling the ants without using a lot of pesticide in the home. And Wanda, you have children, I have children. The last thing we want to do is be spraying something in the house if we don't have to. All right, let's do another one.
Where do Japanese beetles come from, and what can I do to get rid of them?
Well, I guess they originally came from Japan. I don't know, but now that they're here, they primarily they're coming from grubs, white grubs that live in the ground. Japanese beetles are the mature form, the adult stage of the white grub. If you've dug in your ground at all at your home, you've probably come across a grub. They're creamy, white, kind of pale in color, fairly robust insects that sometimes they're as big as your little finger, and they're tunneling and feeding on the grass roots in the ground. Now, just because you see 2 or 3 when you dig a hole doesn't mean you have a problem. It takes a lot of grubs to really damage the lawn, but the grubs aren't nearly as big a problem as the Japanese beetles that they turn into. A couple of things to think about. You can control the grubs if you treat in the spring of the year, typically in May or June, with a granular insecticide that you just broadcast over the yard with your fertilizer spreader. Does a good job. You can also treat for the beetles. Now, one thing that I advise against is using the Japanese beetle bags, those little plastic yellow bags that attract beetles. Have you used those before, Wanda?
Once or twice, but it's been a few years.
Yeah. Those bags attract more beetles than they could ever capture. It's a pheromone trap, and it draws in beetles from all over. And so the best thing to do with those is to give it to your neighbor or somebody down the road. And don't use that in your landscape, because more than likely you're going to attract a lot of beetles, a lot more than will ever end up in that trap.
Right.
So the best thing really to do is to spray for them as you see them. A lot of common insecticides do a nice job: Sevin, permethrin, Ortho, Bug Be Gone. There are lots and lots of options for control of Japanese beetles. So there typically are a lot of them all at once. They kind of explode and there's just tons and tons of them, and then they sort of taper off after a few weeks. They really like roses, they like crepe myrtles, and sometimes they get to be a problem in the vegetable garden too.
Okay, this is our last and final question, and this comes from a South Hall resident. Is this the right time to overseed and fertilize your lawn?
If you have a fescue lawn, a tall fescue lawn, it's probably taking a beating this summer from the heat. A good time to do it right now, certainly. And folks, we hope that you'll give us a call with your other questions or give us an email at the Extension office. We'd love to hear from you. Wanda and I will do our best to answer your questions. And maybe you'll see your question on the next version of Let's Talk when we do the mailbag segment.